Hello, it's me, Ethan. That funny little guy you might have seen posting about orcs on TikTok and YouTube Shorts. If you've been keeping up with my antics, you'll know that I just finished painting the Orks of the Combat Patrol box set, which I've been sharing in funny little videos like this. This is Warboss Wreck Havoc, spelled the way you think it is. He's never lost a hand-to-hand fight with his iconic bomber hammer, but he's also never fought one with it either. Despite this, he's confident that he can win 100% of the fights he wages with this weapon. Technically, he's correct. And if you haven't been keeping up with my antics, now you know I've done that. Throughout my adventures, I've been showing off a couple of examples of kit bashing with the orcs that I've built. With this in mind, I thought I'd go through and highlight how I've kit bashed these orcs, including where I got the other pieces from other sets that exist. I've gotten so many questions about how I kit bashed my warboss in mega armor, it's quicker for me to do a video like this than it is to respond to them all individually. So, now in the grand scheme of kit bashing, the models I've built probably aren't that revolutionary. I've only been doing this for a couple of months, and I only had a few box sets to pull pieces from, but maybe I'll have an idea in here that you'll enjoy enough to apply to your own army. And if there's no ideas in here that you enjoy, keep that to yourself, I suppose. So sit back and relax as I take you through my Ork Combat Patrol and show you just how I've decided to customize these boys. Wow. Right off the bat, I'll mention that most of the kit bashing I was able to do mostly revolves around the infantry units in the box set. The Ork Combat Patrol comes with 20 boys, 3 Def Copters, as well as 1 Def Dread, and out of all of them, I found the boys were the most easiest to kit bash. Most easiest? Yeah, makes sense. I'm a big fan of the vehicles that come in the Orks Combat Patrol set. However, their designs are very orky by default. Like, they're very scrapped together, there's a lot of fine details and bits of machinery that are jutting out all over the place, and basically you don't really have a lot of room to glue new pieces onto it. It especially doesn't help that the Def Copters are essentially just 2 halves of the vehicle that you glue together as one solid piece. So there's not really anything you can cut off, trim, or mold really quite easily. They also don't really have a lot of surface area to work with. Mostly I find when I'm kit bashing things, I like to glue something onto a large bit of flat space, but you don't really have a lot of real estate to work with a lot of these vehicles. I think the most that I could get away with was gluing a different arm onto one of the Def Copter pilots, but I completely forget which one that was, so take a look at these 3 Def Copters, and if you notice the arm that isn't supposed to be there, let me know, I guess, because I've completely forgotten. At this point, I'm genuinely curious, and I have straight up thrown away the instructions, so I got no fucking idea which one I modified. Now, one of the easiest and most enjoyable ways to kit bash models in Warhammer 400 and 1000 is to replace their heads. However, with the Orks of the Combat Patrol, this can prove to be a somewhat difficult task. One of the bigger criticisms of the modern Ork boys is that all of the models are monopose, and the boys in the Combat Patrol are no different. You basically get 2 of each individual model, meaning that every Ork will have some kind of clone. There's only 2 variants of the boys you can slightly customize, and since each one of those variants has a duplicate, that's 4 models total. 2 of the boys have a special weapon equipped, which you can choose to either be a rocket launcher or a big shooter. The boss knobs leading their packs could also be built with a chain axe, pistol, power claw, or a free offhand, and also have a helmed and unhelmed variant. Outside of that, the other 16 boys don't have any customization options, and worse still, some of their models can be very hard to kit bash. In 40k, you can find a lot of headpieces that can be fairly interchangeable. Take, for instance, the Space Marines, who basically have a soup bowl in their ceramite you can whack any headpiece you want in. The Orks of the Combat Patrol, however, have models that include heads that are attached to shoulders, arms, or torsos, meaning that replacing the heads isn't always an easy thing to do. Here's a couple of the models that I managed to replace the heads on, all of which have been given leftover heads from a Storm Boys kit. These model variants had at least some flexibility to have their heads easily switched out, or were easily able to cut off. So thankfully, you can only really see these alterations if you look too closely underneath their chins. However, to the untrained eye, they just look like regular orcs. and it also helps to mask the fact that their bodies are near identical to others in their warband. Similarly, I was also able to use leftover pieces of the Stormboy kit to add a bit of surplus gear to some of the boys, which is helpful, especially since the boys have a lot of surplus real estate on their bodies thanks to their massive lats. Like, straight up, you could probably fit an entire Imperial Guard model just, like, onto this Orc's back. Like, that's how much fucking real estate they have. I mean, that's an exaggeration. It's probably like, I don't know, you could fit a Nurgling on there, maybe? I was able to add some excess gear to some of the gun-wielding models, as well as repurpose 2 of the leftover rocket packs from the Stormboys. These were originally intended to be used on the Gretchen Companion model, available in one of the Stormboys variants, but I used them on both of these regular boys instead. This was before I realized that this would mean the Gretchen Companion would have a huge square hole in his spine, so I had to fill that in with some leftover gear. They've been on my pile of shame since November last year, and in turn I myself am ashamed for that. Another, more creative use of the Stormboy remnants is this model, whom I've dubbed Kingpin. This rusted copper crown is actually one of the headpieces of a Stormboy rocket pack. It was a little scrappy looking, so I didn't end up using it in any of my Stormboy builds, which is fortunate because it made for a perfect fucked up little hat, I guess. Clearly I'm getting a lot of mileage over this one leftover box of Stormboys. However, I also had a leftover box of Chaos Space Marines that I still needed to use. Speaking of hats, one thing I noticed was that the Chaos Space Marines pauldrons are almost the perfect size of Orc heads. I say almost perfect because, well, look at him. In any case, I figured Orcs are scrappy enough to piece together what they want from the battlefield, so one of them might as well get real into accessorizing and bring a new meaning to the word slay. And then there's this lad here, whom I've delightfully dubbed Pincushion. You single-handedly made that entire bottle of superglue that I bought absolutely worth it. Pincushion had some serious real estate on his spine to work with, but given his curved hunch, it was hard to affix any single piece of plastic that clearly didn't belong there. My solution? Several pieces of plastic, which also don't belong there, but have been stabbed in anyway. Pierced into his fungal flesh is a Chaos Space Marine chainsword, a knife from the Space Marine Assault Intercessors kit, which is painted black to make it Chaos related, and the helm of a Chaos Space Marine, because I think that's really funny. Objectively, I'm right. Speaking of Chaos Space Marines, I also had half of a heavy bolter that I couldn't use, since I'd already cut apart the faceplate to use as a tombstone on one of the Chaos Space Marines bases. Look, I know I have a lot of unpainted minis, but like, you're no better. Let's be real. This wasn't an issue, however, if I mounted the rest of the weapon on the back of one of the boss knobs, as it would only be seen from one angle. You can't tell that it's only one half of the heavy weapon unless you're really looking for it, or if you know to look for it, which you probably do now because I told you about it, so... It doesn't add to the knob's silhouette in the same way that the standard back bling does, but since I wasn't a huge fan of the unhelmed or gun-wielding variant of the knob, I wanted to do what I could to make the two models different from each other. Now, while these are all very subtle changes to the boys, they achieve their goal of diversifying the models of the Combat Patrol. Without them, I'd essentially be left with 8 models that have an identical duplicate. Or a full 10 if I wasn't interested in the special weapon boys or the boss knob options. I wasn't super interested with building any of the orcs with rocket launchers because I wanted to go for a more bullet-centric army. You know, like Daka 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 Daka, etc. But then we come down to my favorite kitbash of the set, one that proved so popular with my viewers that it got recognized at my local Warhammer store. Not me, mind you, it. And so here they are. Warboss Wreck Havoc. A warboss in mega armor with his chain axe replaced with the bomber hammer. The number one question I've got in the last few months is how I managed to build this violent little guy who's incredible in melee combat once. Basically, a while back I picked up a Daka Jet kit for some aerial superiority across the battlefield. Also, it was Christmas and it was on sale. Not at the official Games Workshop web store, mind you, because they don't go on sale. Like ever. Ever. What I didn't know about the kit was that it allowed you to build a couple of other aeroplane variants, including the Blitzer Bomber, the Burner Bomber, and the Wazbomb Blast Jet. The first two are pretty easy to understand thanks to context cues and Orkish syntax, but I got no fucking idea what they were going for with this one. Now, when I bought the kit, I was kinda married to the idea of building the Daggerjet proper for two reasons. One, I'm a sucker for simplicity, and I've got a taste for the classics. And two, while the other variants had special gameplay abilities like the destruction of cover or defensive force fields, the Daggerjet's main mechanics were fuck this one guy in particular. But what that meant was that I had a bunch of extra pieces to play with, most of them being bombs. The Wazbomb gear was very much tailored towards the Daggerjet's wings and body, so it was pretty difficult to adapt to other models. The Burner and Blitzer bombers basically just added a bunch of torpedoes and nukes underneath the wings of the aircraft, meaning you could just build those and basically just put them wherever you want. This made it super easy to adapt the Warboss in Mega Armor. I basically just had to shear off the chain axe head with a pair of pliers, then superglue a Blitzer bomb right onto the top of the stump. A couple things to keep in mind is that I did need to use super glue rather than Citadel plastic glue, as the bomb's surface was cylindrical. This made it hard to get good traction, so I had to hold the bomb in place for a while. Once it was affixed, however, there was enough surface area at the peak of the chain axis stump that it wasn't going anywhere, which I wish could also be said for the Defcopter's rotors. These fucking things up here have come off like twice, on two of the models. With the extra pieces, this also means I have one full Blitzer bomb left, as well as the 4 Burner Bomber torpedoes. Okay, well technically I only have 3 Burner Bomber torpedoes left because I had to use one for very important reasons. You are absolutely not tournament sanctioned, and I love you for it. So with that in mind, what do you think I should use these extra bombs and plane bits on? Let me know in the comments below. That's also not like a YouTube engagement thing, by the way. Like, I genuinely want to know how best to use these fucking bits of plastic, because, like, I got them, and they look good, you know? It's bombs. Okay, so right now my laundry list of ideas is, like, rocket car with a bunch of bombs taped to it, another Daggerjet, but with twice as many explosives as it should have, or a mech gun with every conceivable weapon known to man glued onto its body. And you know what? That's the beauty of Orks to me. There's no wrong answers, and they've already forgotten the question. Yeah.